Brian Meece, CEO and founder of Rockethub. A pleasure to have you here.
Likewise, thank you so much for having me.
I am absolutely thrilled at what's going on in the whole crowdfunding space. I mean, it's as critical to making people's dreams come true as the growth of the internet and enabled by all the technology coming online. So, I mean, really, literally, people used to have dreams and they would stay dreams because they could never capitalize it. And you're changing that. So if you don't mind, tell me I want to know the founding story. So where did Rockethub come from? Where did the name come from?
Sure.
Tell me all about that.
So my background before working at Rockethub was in creative media. So I worked as a filmmaker, worked in television, been playing in bands since I was in high school, still playing a band now. I don't want to brag.
What do you play?
Awesome at the ukulele, pretty darn good at it. But this crowdfunding movement really started in the world of the arts. I was actually getting investors for one of my feature films in the late 1990s, and I read a story in Filmmaker magazine about Darren Aronofsky, how he raised $60,000 from his own community, bypassed kind of the rigmarole that I was doing out pounding pavement, pitching investors. And I became very interested in how he did that, and I thought, wow, there's really something to that model. It's very interesting. A few years later, a singer-songwriter by the name of Jill Sobel raised over $100,000 just through her newsletter fan base. And I thought there's really something to this community funding is how I originally saw it. A community funding model that's very disruptive. I'm interested in building a company that supports ideas and really taking that model to new verticals such as entrepreneurship and science. So that's kind of where we are now. I kind of feel like we're talking about social funding and the future of capital formation. It reminds me a lot of similar conversations that we were having in 2002 talking about social media.
Right.
Who's using it? Is it going to work? Is it a fad? Is it going to really have an impact? The artists were the first ones on the scene in social media. The first ones using Twitter and Friendster and MySpace before ultimately it became a Facebook migration. But the same now it's like in 2012 we're having the same conversation, but instead of talking about social media and is it going to change the world and is it going to be this big thing, we're talking about social funding, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, in a big
over the
way.
next 5 to 10 years. The online, the social funding will dominate the online space, period.
So talk about the creative moment of where you said, okay, I'm going to create Rockethub. Was there sort of a bit flip?
Sure.
And your vision of what you wanted to do there?
So, it again, came from my own pain points as an artist. I wanted to make an album, cut a record with my friends. It costs about 7 to 10 grand to do that. And I thought, instead of putting money on my credit cards or taking money out of the vacation fund, which my wife wouldn't have been too thrilled with, crowdfunding is the answer. So it came from a very kind of core pain point that I had, and I knew I wasn't alone. I said, I know there are tons of artists and idea makers and thinkers that have ideas that want to get them made, and they have a community that believes in them. And let's put together a company. Let's put together a company that liberates ideas, strengthens communities, and educates the world on how to use crowdfunding, and that's what we're doing.
Were there other crowdfunding platforms out there? Why did you create your own? And what was sort of like the unique vision that you wanted Rockethub, and where'd the name come from?
That's a lot of questions. So first of all, one of my co-founders, Jed Cohen, has had a very interesting kind of career. You may remember him in Home Alone or Home Alone 2 as a successful kid actor.
Yes.
Then he played Macaulay Culkin's cousin in those movies. And then he had a very successful career as a teenager on Broadway, in some Tony Award-winning productions. And then, of course, when he graduated high school, he went off to Harvard and got an astrophysics degree, astronomy and astrophysics.
Everybody
does that. So we kind of had an in-house, a champion for the name. So whenever we were kind of, it's kind of like coming up with a band name, a group of guys coming out, throwing out stuff, and Jed was really gung-ho on having something with rocket in it, and it just kind of stuck. So it just kind of, it was kind of serendipitous. We liked the dynamic metaphor of launching and making things happen and making dreams happen, because I think that the space program and space innovation really captures the imagination of people. So we wanted to do that with our brand and really support, again, that idea of really being a foundation of support for folks that want to liberate their own ideas.
Mm-hmm. And but the idea to create your own versus utilize other platforms, were elements that you wanted to create in Rockethub that didn't exist elsewhere?
Yes, so I wanted to really democratize the fundraising model, build a site where anybody who's legitimate and has a project that's legal and in good taste could not only launch a project but learn how to use the platform. The tech component is fairly set, right? So you have an online transactional component, and the website, from a tech standpoint, is pretty well intact. But what I saw was a missing link, and that missing link is an educational component. Mm-hmm. And I recognize that if crowdfunding were to be a movement, this is a couple of years ago, now it's a movement in full swing, that education was going to play a key point. The artists were kind of hip to this, so my friends that were playing in bands, the filmmakers, the theater kids, they all understood it really, really quickly, and they understood how to, get their fan base and their audience kind of, funding and participating with projects. But a lot of folks, scientists, entrepreneurs, and other community leaders, this was a bit more of a foreign idea to them. So we started putting together a curriculum on how to use crowdfunding for these new verticals, and it's been key to our success. So we've presented it, TEDx, South by Southwest, Makers Faire, U.S. Congress, big companies, showing them how crowdfunding is being used and how to utilize it to make ideas happen.
So let me get into the numbers a little bit, if you would. How rapidly has Rockethub been growing? Because it's really been taking off.
Right. Pun intended, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And how many projects have been funded on there? How big is the community?
So we initiated our platform a little over 2 years ago with 5 campaigns on it, 5 projects. I was one of them. Jed was one of them. Now we initiate about 1,000 projects a month from all over the world.
That's extraordinary.
Millions of dollars are flowing through the site on a regular basis, and millions of people come to the platform looking at projects, sharing projects, and of course funding projects.
And the people funding the projects are from around the world?
That's exactly right. We have a really global base. I mean, the bulk of the users are still in the United States, probably about 3/4, but we have a big contingency in Canada, the UK, Western Europe, Australia, and it just keeps growing. We've initiated campaigns out of over 150 nations across the world.
Great. If you don't mind, talk a little bit about some of your favorite campaigns that have been initiated and successfully funded.
Sure. I mean, we love all our babies at Rockethub.
I know.
There are some that stand out that are really exciting to see. We have one actually happening on Rockethub right now. Andy is a gentleman out of El Paso, Texas, that built a spring-powered running shoe after he was told by his doctors that he may need to stop running because of his knee pain. He said, I love running. I'm going to tinker in the garage. I'm going to build a shoe that supports my athleticism. And he did that. And he built a shoe that allows him to run without any kind of pain, but also it makes runners kind of faster and more buoyant. He has a beautiful project that's currently on the platform. Within a couple of weeks, he raised over 25 grand, which was his goal. And now he's seeing this proliferation, this new audience coming to his to the platform and buying his shoes, and he's just taking that extra step forward into the mainstream with his little shoe company out of El Paso, Texas. So it's really, really cool to see his community also just becoming evangelists for this shoe. Folks that are saying, I used to not be able to run until I started wearing Andy's shoes, and now my hips and knees, they're great. So it's really a great case study in innovation and story coming together to get projects funded and to have them just spread through the world.
A couple of others, and anything in the science technology space?
Sure. So we've done a lot with science and tech. STEM really is one of our staples. The STEM category. We've done some really cool stuff with science. We just recently had Tweets in Space. A couple of guys that built an intergalactic device to send your tweets into space. They're going to be spamming alien life forms, light years away. They raised 9 or 10 grand, and they got a ton of press. I mean, Time, BBC, Nat Geo, all sorts of folks were running their story. So very dynamic duo, doing really cool stuff, and tweets in space. I mean, it's just kind of built in cool.
So, what's the average amount that a Rockethub project is being funded for right now?
So the average right now is probably around, it's probably between $5,000 and $6,000, but the range that we see the most activity in currently is $3,500 to $35,000. The average contribution on our platform is about $75, which means for every 100 people that contribute to a project, it's about $7,500. So you could see 50 people, it's $3,500, $3,800. 100 people, $7,500. 200 people, 15 grand. 300 people, and so on and so on.
And on the upside, what have you seen as sort of the largest capital raise so far on a single project, and the most number of people on that project?
Right. So we've seen within the game community, we had James Portnow, who believes games can change the world. He believes that games can better humanity through a concept called tangential learning, where he puts these little nuggets in games to inspire folks to learn things on their own. Very fascinating stuff. I mean, he's been a designer on big games like Farmville and others. But he's raised over 140, 150 grand for his web-based show called Extra Credits. We've also had a big initiative within the world of science. It was a collective of scientists that launched projects in unison that have raised about $200,000 for kind of seed stage science projects.
Which starts to get really serious money. It's enough to really get a company and a project and a product going.
I like to say that the projects, we don't judge them on how much money they're raising. We judge them on the impact that they are having on their communities. Big difference. That impact can be massive, especially in aggregate. When we're talking about launching thousands and tens of thousands of projects that are impacting their local communities, we're literally changing the world. The ability for folks, this is the difference between folks making stuff happen and not. Taking those steps or not. So we see that being a very, very important chasm that's being leapt with Rockethub and folks funding on the platform.
So Brian, I want to get into exactly how do you use Rockethub. An entrepreneur coming has a brilliant idea, and they need 25K, 100K. How do they do it? What are the step-by-step? What should they be getting ready on Rockethub?
So the platform is very simple to use. They'll upload their project page, which will consist of a video, a pitch video, that shows who they are, what their idea is, what they're all about, and really why their project matters. I always tell folks to pour as much emotion into that pitch video as possible and really showcase who you are and what you're all about.
How long is that video, should it be?
It should be about 1 to 3 minutes, ideally. And then you also will have a project description, 3 to 5 paragraphs, high level, really excellent communication framework, talking again about this specific project and what impact you're looking to have. Then you want to put together some really good rewards that range in price point. One of the cool things about crowdfunding is that people can pick kind of where they want to play in the relationship and in the project. So $20 all the way up to $5,000. You want to have different rewards that people can.
So is 5,000 a max on Rockethub?
5,000 currently is the max with our kind of goods-based platform, because that's the largest transaction that can happen with the credit card right now.
So that's what's driving that limit is credit card transaction.
Yeah, currently. That's right. Yeah.
Right. And the rewards are what sorts of things?
So they can be goods, services, products, experiences. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a cool product that you're making, maybe one of the price points is that product before everybody else gets it. Maybe you get to come to a launch party at the at the office or at the lab or at the at a cool event space. It's really important to kind of get into the head of the funders a bit and figure out what your community really wants, what it is that they really are interested in getting in exchange for this financial contribution, because this is not a donation. It's not a charity. This is a trade. It's a trade, not aid mechanism, where in exchange for the financial contributions, a funder gets stuff or experiences back. So you want to put together the best stuff and experiences that you can.
And what else is the entrepreneur on Rockethub needing to do to maximize their impact?
What's really interesting is that we started to look at a lot of data across the board, from the artists to the scientists to the entrepreneurs, and we started to look at what makes for a successful project. What is the secret sauce that all these projects have? And we figured it out. So I'll share that with you.
Please.
Every project that's successful on our platform, any platform, has to start with an amazing project, with a person front and center who's passionate about seeing this project come to life. Just the fact that people are making stuff, it's not enough anymore. You got to really cut through the clutter with emotion. People say we're in the information age. I say we're in the emotional age.
Interesting.
Cut through the clutter with emotion.
Right.
The artists know this. The artists have the highest hit rate with crowdfunding. So we take what they're doing right and we show scientists and we show entrepreneurs how to use this. Number one, core awesome project with awesome people front and center. So you got to have that. Second thing you have to have is a core network of supporters. These are people that already know you, know of your reputation. Really, crowdfunding is taking social capital and transferring that into real capital through this online process. What is social capital? It's trust, it's reputation, it's respect, it's leadership. And you take those components and you transfer them quite literally into real capital. Now, what's really neat is that the projects that bring their communities in immediately get traction and funding. But what happens is those communities become evangelists. They become your sales force, spreading your project in an authentic and very cool manner to their communities. And that's where the phenomena of crowdfunding gets very, very powerful. The bulk of the funds, 75 to 85% of funds for most projects, come through first degree and second degree networks, which means people that you know or that know of you through someone that's vouched for you. So you have to have a community to really initiate that traction. It doesn't have to be a massive community. Some communities you'll get initiated with 20, 50 people. Others have thousands. So the bigger the better. But I also like to say the deeper the better. The more trust and respect a community has for that project leader, the better off they're going to do. So that's the second thing you have to have. Third thing, every successful project has on Rockethub cool rewards, stuff that people want. A $500 thank you on Twitter is not going to be enough. Right? So I'll walk you through what I did for my band.
Please.
So for $10, you got a CD from me. Okay. $20, you got a CD signed.
What was the name of your band, by the way?
It's called Brian and Sylvan and Friends.
Okay.
So it's kind of a big, happy family group. So I gave it $10. You got your own CD. $20, you got a CD signed by me and the band, delivered to your doorstep with love, with your own custom haiku poem. Now guess which one outsold the other 4-1?
The second.
And it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
For double the price.
Yeah.
But it's about that communication and about that emotional state change people get when they read the reward. For $50, we would Sergeant Pepper your ass. We would stick your face on the cover of the record. And we had a lot of people do that. For $100, I would give you an ukulele lesson. For $250, I would take you surfing out on Long Island. I had a stranger do that, by the way. For $600, I'd write you your own custom song, acoustic song. For $1,000, you can come hang out in the studio with us. Nobody took that. For $5,000, you can be the star of our music video. Nobody took that. But I raised $6,000, about $1,000 over my goal, to make a record. And the key is to give value back to the community. Give the community, give your audience a piece of the journey. Sell the journey. Have those multiple points of impact so folks can pick where they want to play, and have them participate in the process.
That's awesome. Thank you for that explanation, actually, and the passion and energy with which you sort of convey that. I think is it's all about that. It really is. It's someone making an emotional buy.
That's exactly right.
Because no one really needs the stuff that they're finding there. They may, but probably not. And this is probably
It's about that emotional state change. Yeah. So then one of the questions that we get, well, what about with the Jobs Act, with investment on the horizon? It's a whole completely different animal, isn't it? And the answer is no. The answer is that investors that are going to be using crowdfunding in the future are going to be driven by the emotional components, the relationship components, getting a good deal, with their investment, and looking for that community traction, that social proof. Same dynamics drive crowdfunding, no matter what the flavor.
And I want to come back to the Jobs Act and get your do a deep dive in there a little bit. So. The components on Rockethub, you set a target.
Yep.
And how do you advise people set that target? And then do you also set the time over which the campaign goes?
That's right.
So let's talk about some of these parameters.
Got it. So a project leader comes to Rockethub, uploads their pitch page, sets a goal that they're looking to hit.
Do you approve the
We
pitch
approve.
pages?
We look at every single project.
And what are you not approving and what are you approving?
So you have to be who you say you are. So we authenticate your ID. Your project has to be legal, so no breaking of any U.S. laws, and the project has to be in good taste, so not offensive to any person or any community, and friendly for our community. So as long as you meet those criteria, you're good to go on our platform.
Right.
So you set a goal amount, and you set a time frame that you're looking to hit the goal in. Anywhere from 15 to 90 days can be set on the platform currently.
And on that time limit, why would someone go 15 days? Why would they go 90? What's the average?
So we found that most successful campaigns are between 30 to 60 days, depending on what they're looking to raise. So most of the 30 to 60 days tends to be the sweet spot for projects that hit their funding goals.
Is there any insight into the psychology there?
So every campaign, it's like an online event.
Yeah.
And it starts with some traction, and it starts with a spark.
Yeah.
And then what happens, it's like a U shape. So it starts with the communities that come on, and then halfway through the campaign it starts to dip a bit. But one of the cool things about crowdfunding is that there's a deadline. And what does a deadline do? Motivates people. I'm the guy that waits to the last minute to put my taxes in the mail. When I was in grad school, I was waiting, last day to get the paper in. The deadline, I always got everything in, but the deadline was what motivated me. And I'm apparently not alone in this. So deadlines motivate people. And because there is a deadline that people need to participate within this, with this event before the time's out, that is a motivator for folks to contribute. So then we see a spike of activity the last week or so of the campaign. So every campaign looks a bit like a U. It typically has some spikes along the way, but a lot of funding from the initial stages when it first comes out, and then a lot of funding that happens afterwards, right before the buzzer hits. With our platform, we're a keep what you raise platform. So if you're a project leader that's dedicated to making your project happen, then we're the platform for you. You can set a goal for $100,000, hit $75,000, and walk away with the funds. We have a different fee structure, so it's 4% if you hit your goal or exceed your goal. It's 8% if you don't, but you still walk away with money at the end of the day.
So when you see a project start its funding, and we said 30 to 60 days, is there a point at which, if it passes a certain level of funding early on, that you have a probability that it's going to reach 100% of its funding?
25% is the magic number.
Really? So talk about that. What does that mean?
So first of all, if a project launches and receives funds day one of their launch, we know that there's an 80% shot that they're going to hit or exceed their goal. What's also interesting is that for projects that hit 25% within the first kind of third of their campaign, we see about a 90% hit rate of them hitting or exceeding their goals.
Wow. So it's just, it's kind of momentum, or?
It's momentum, it's communities. It's also, let's walk through the experience from a funding perspective. Let's say you send me along a project that's got, Rockethub project that's got ukuleles all over it. And you say, hey, Brian, check this ukulele project out. I know you're into ukuleles. I just funded it. This is cool. This is my buddy. He's into ukuleles. So I'll come on there. I'll be like, oh, this is awesome. Peter's down. I see his face there. He's funded it. I'm going to fund it too. But the first thing I'm going to look at is this project resonate with me emotionally, right? I'm going to see them. I'm going to say, yes, I like the people, I like their project. It makes me feel good on that emotional level. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look over. Do they have a community? Or is this a party where I'm going to be the first one on the dance floor? Because I don't like that. I want to have social traction, social proof. I want to go to the party everybody else is at.
Yeah.
And that social dynamic is key for crowdfunding. So I'll look over at the gauge and I'll see 25% funded through their own community and comments happening and people, celebrating the momentum. And then I'll say, well, cool. What do I get in exchange for those financial contributions? Oh wow, I get tickets to this cool ukulele concert that's down in Williamsburg. That sounds perfect for me. So I'm going to pull the trigger on that. But the process was I resonated with the project, typically through somebody that I know.
Yep.
I look at the project leaders and go, I like these folks, I trust them, I like their project, I believe in it. Then I say, okay, their community is there, I get comfortable, I'm not the only one at this party. And then I look at the cool rewards and I say, yep, that's something that I can spend my money on and get behind. People often ask me about videos. Video is really important. We found that projects get traction faster, they fund faster, they overfund faster with videos. Most of the time, people will then ask, well, how slick should the video be? And I like to say authenticity trumps slickness. I want to see you, I don't want to see your project, but you don't need to be Francis Ford Coppola with dangling cameras and lights spinning around. Maybe unless you're a filmmaker or you have something that's really that showcases what you're all about. But for the rest of us, authenticity trumps slickness. I want to see some credibility with you as a project leader. I want to see what you're up to. Maybe your workspace or your lab, or you doing your thing in your environment. But just shoot it on a smartphone or on your webcam. You don't have to be out there going crazy.
So the project is launched. You're halfway through. You're halfway funded. Things are going well. How do you communicate with the people who have given you money so far? Do you get their emails and money as they make a purchase? Do you get their money and email at that moment? Do you get it at the end?
You get their email at that moment,
yeah.
And then the funds are all held by Rockethub until the end of your campaign. After which we disperse you the funds straight away.
But you can be emailing with them. Hey, Brian, thank you.
Yep.
Would you tell more of your friends? We're almost there.
Yep.
And do people do that effectively?
They do. We found that a lot of folks that contribute at the beginning of the campaign, remember those folks that were really excited in the beginning, that showed validation for the project and funded it and spread it around, often they come back for a second bite at the apple toward the middle or the end of the campaign after extra milestones are hit.
So people actually might contribute a couple times.
They might get excited. Oh, they're almost at 50%. I'll be the one that bumps them over. Or they're almost at 100%. I'll be the one that bumps them over. So people do get excited. And we've also found that the press loves Rockethub projects. A lot of entrepreneurs will ask me, Brian, I saw you in the Wall Street Journal. I saw you in the New York Times. Saw you in The Economist. Who's your publicist?
Right.
And I'll say, we don't have a publicist.
The community. The
community is our publicist. Yeah. The projects are our publicity.
So do project owners who are able to get a lot of online PR most successful, does that help drive these as well?
Well, it's interesting because the press loves crowdfunding projects. They love these Rockethub project leaders. They want the successful ones. So we get calls literally every day from press. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's smaller niche blogs. By the way, oftentimes the regional press and the local niche blogs drive more money than a spread in a big publication. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So never overlook the niche players and those in the regional press as well. There can be fantastic resources for promo and funding. But oftentimes they'll reach out to us. They'll notice that they see a project that's hot, that's burning up the charts, and they'll be interested in that story. The reason that the press loves these projects is because each one is different. Each project leader is their own character with their own story that's looking to make something happen. It's a story of empowerment and excitement and a little bit of inspiration. Folks that are out there kind of making things happen against the odds, and the press consistently loves that.
Great. So I'm going to switch a little bit and let's talk a little bit about Fortune 100, Fortune 500 CEOs that are out there. How should they be thinking about the power of the crowd And have you had conversations with folks? What are your thoughts on this?
So we've had conversations with big companies like American Express, or giving presentations at Facebook. Really, again, educating folks on what crowdfunding is, who's using it, and how it's being used. I think that what's really interesting from a perspective of a large established company is this community component that's happening on Rockethub. There's an authenticity that comes through these communities that's you just can't fabricate, you can't build, you can't replicate. And I think that a lot of companies are coming to us wanting to participate with this community in different ways. So we're in open conversations now with a lot of large companies that may be able to help our users in some way through extra funds, through extra promotion. And in exchange, they get access to these communities in a very cool way that's not an ad or something salesy, but just saying, hey, we're a large company, but we believe in the power of innovation, and we believe in the power of community building, and here's a little bit of extra money for this project leader, and we're going to promote them through our channels as well.
Do you think large companies can utilize crowdfunding like this to test the validity of products before they actually start manufacturing them?
Yes, but they'll have to personalize them. Crowdfunding is not for big logos and for folks to hide behind big logos. Crowdfunding is built on the relationship components and, again, those emotional components. So they need to have a person front and center saying, I work for a company, XYZ, and this is a new initiative that we're doing, or here's a new device or product that we're doing. I'm the guy that's making it. This is my team. This is how we want to change the world, et cetera, so on.
People give to people.
People give to people. I mean, PBS and NPR know it. Yeah. Like they do their pledge drives. Who gets me every time? Ira Glass. Yeah. Hey, this is Ira Glass. If you don't fund me, then This American Life won't happen. Dang it, Ira Glass. I don't know Ira Glass. I wish I did know Ira Glass, but I feel like I know him, right? So that emotion, that relationship, in my mind, it's perceived. It's in my mind, it's real, but in real life, it's probably a perceived relationship. But they get it. That those emotional drivers get people to fund. So the answer is yes, but they need to have people front and center.
When a project gets funded early on, typically it's conceptual. It hasn't been built yet, or maybe there's a small prototype, and there's a chance that even though the $50,000, $100,000 was raised, it doesn't get implemented. So what percentage might fail, and what's the consequences if a project does fail? What do you think about that?
So we've got to go back to transparency and communication. So first of all, if there's a problem or a hiccup with a project, let the community know. So if you're an entrepreneur and you've raised a ton of money to make whatever it is that you're going to make, and you're experiencing a hiccup along the way, hey, that happens to all of us. Just communicate that to everybody. Let them know what's happened. Let them know that the deadline's pushed back a few weeks, or you're thinking about, instead of having it be pink, having it be purple. And let the community know what's going on and why. And we found that alone is a huge deal. Transparency and communication really nips a lot of that in the bud.
Interesting. During a campaign, during this, let's say it's a 45-day and midpoint, how often are you communicating your project to that community? How often is sort of like a good communication rate? Is it daily, weekly?
So the answer, again, is it depends on how are you communicating with your audience already. Again, the artists, they communicate with their fan base constantly, right?
What does that mean, constantly?
That means they're pushing messages in Twitter, taking pictures of them when they're at gigs, but also when they're just hanging out, grabbing coffee.
Yeah.
Or they'll just ask their audience a question like, what do you think about this subject or that subject? Not necessarily pushing their stuff.
Right.
They have an authentic conversations with their audience.
Yeah.
So if you're the type of person that's already doing that, then your Rockethub campaign just gives you something else to talk about, and it's actually very natural to kind of just constantly be pushing folks in a kind of pulling them into the project through dynamic conversation. If you're not used to communicating with folks, then you need to be a little bit more strategic.
So Brian, how many successful projects have there been on the site so far?
So we've initiated over 10,000 campaigns over the course of the last 2 years.
Amazing.
0 instances of successful fraud. The next question is, why is that, right? Well, remember, crowdfunding is taking social capital, which again, trust, respect, community leadership, and transferring that to real capital. Do fraudsters have trust, respect, community leadership, and thousands of people? That combined with thousands of people looking at project pages, it's like having thousands of people look at, doing due diligence on people that are out fundraising. So those, two patterns, in harmony, really mitigate the fraud quite a bit.
Extraordinary. So I'm really excited about the ability of individuals and small teams to do bold things, to do science that might be considered a crazy idea. I like to say the day before something is truly a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea.
Yeah.
And when science becomes so mainstream and traditional because it can't afford to take risks, because if people won't fund that, here's the chance for the crowd to take risks together and fund science. So talk a little about your vision there and what you see possible.
So we're really excited about what we're doing, leading the science crowdfunding movement on Rockethub. So a lot of folks don't know this, but my wife is a research scientist. She works at Columbia University doing brain research. And when we first launched the platform a couple of years ago, she kind of mentioned to me, maybe you should look at using crowdfunding with science. And at the time I thought, well, let's focus on the artists first and we'll get the science in a bit. And then when I was at graduate school, we launched Rockethub and I was finishing up graduate school. And I had some of my classmates say, Brian, I recognize some of the bands and filmmakers that are using crowdfunding for these creative projects. Can I crowdfund my research? I didn't get this grant that I wanted to get, and I need $5,000 or $6,000 to go overseas and do some research. And I said, yes, I think you can crowdfund it. So I started working with academics that I was studying alongside with at Columbia, and lo and behold, it started to work. A couple of years later now, we're the top leader when it comes to crowdfunding for science and academics, and the same core components hold true. Awesome projects, core network of support, cool rewards, make for success. And what's really cool about the scientists, they're raising, some of them raising, 5 figures on the site now. They're saying, the funding is really great because it lets me, take the first step in this research. But what I'm super excited about is having an avenue to share my story. A lot of folks have always asked, what is it that I do? What is it that I spend my days doing? And I'm able to put together a project that really articulates who I am, what research I'm doing, why I'm interested in it, and giving the chance for these folks to participate in it with an interesting twist. And I started to think about that. My wife and I have been happily married for 6 years. And I've been to her lab maybe a handful of times. I'm not really sure what they do in that lab. I know it's a lot of hard work and a lot of smart people in there, but that story component and sharing these ideas with the world is what's really exciting. Yes, they're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's awesome, but I think that the real impact is going to be sharing the excitement of making science.
Do you see a time where Rockethub can fund multi-million-dollar, tens of millions of dollars?
Absolutely. So again, the year is 2002, and we're talking about, is Facebook going to get over 1 million users, right? It's going to happen. Within the next 5 to 10 years, the social ritual of crowdfunding will become mainstream, and tens of millions will be just the beginning. The crowdfunding movement, starting within the creative class, it's heading into entrepreneurship and innovation, and it's going to just keep going up from there.
Fantastic. Brian Meece, thank you so much.
Likewise, thank you. This was a pleasure.
A real pleasure, and excited to see your success, and excited to become a user of Rockethub.
Thank you.
Thanks.